Hi, now I said I would do an addendum, a follow-up video episode for the Constitution of Medina that we've just gone through. The Constitution of Medina, when you read it, you can see it's very benign, very benevolent, very accommodating to the Jews. And so, as I said, when I was going through that episode, I was surprised that Jews aren't using it today. It's the equivalent for the Jews, that the Ashtename document would be for the Christians living in Egypt in the 16th century. But nonetheless, when you look at the Constitution of Medina, and then you see what happened to the Jews in Medina, especially the three major Jewish tribes, when you look at those three major Jewish tribes, you will see that they were not treated this way. They were not at all. They were thrown out. Look at the Banu Qaynuka family. The Banu Qaynuka family in 624. Muhammad had only been there for 2 years. In 624, at the Battle of Badr, after the Battle of Badr, he threw them out of Medina, took all the provisions for his men. A year later, in 625, so he'd only been in Medina for 3 years by this time, the Banu Nadir refused to support him in the Battle of Uhud, which he lost, and he came back furious for the Battle of Uhud, and he, again, threw out the Banu Nadir up to Khaybar in the north. This is according to the traditions. And then, of course, as you well know, 2 years later, in 627, when the Meccans came a third time, Muhammad had a trench built so that they could not cross the trench, and so it was called the Battle of the Trench, so neither side lost. And after that battle, he came back and he, according to the traditions, he then confronted the Banu Quraiza for not supporting him against the Meccans. And so, as a result, after 21 days, they finally gave up. And so Muhammad took all the 800 men in groups of 10 and slit their throats and threw them into pits. So all the 800 men were killed in one afternoon. All the women were taken as concubines for his men and the children as slaves. Which then means that after 627, Muhammad had only been in Medina for 5 years by that time, all the Jews were either thrown up to the north in Khaybar, or they had their throats slit or taken as slaves and as concubines for his men. Now stop and think that through. Within 5 years of moving to Medina, he had pretty much created this is called a genocide. I don't know any other word for it. This is a perfect example of genocide, eradicating an entire people, an entire set of tribes. And what was their crime? Well, they didn't support him. So Muslims have always come back to me and they've said, yes, that's true, because the reason why he had to do that, the reason why he had to confront the Jews, the Banu Qaynuka, the Banu Nadir, and the Banu Quraiza, is because they reneged on the Treaty of Medina, the Constitution of Medina. And I've always scratched my head on this one and said, well, if that's the case, then why is it we can't find their names? When you look at the names, and I said in the last episode, it's actually only Article 31. It's actually Article 25 to 33. When you look in the 47 articles, look at the names of those who signed the treaty. Look at those who were part of the treaty. The Banu Auf, the Banu Najjar, the Banu Harith, the Banu Sa'ida, the Banu Jusam, the Banu Aus, the Banu Talaba, and the Banu Jafna. And Shutaiba. Actually, there are 9 names. There are 9 Jewish tribes that signed. I said 8 in the last episode. I was incorrect because I forgot to include the Banu Auf. So 9 different Jewish tribes whose names are missing. And I said this in the last episode, then I'd come back to this. You notice the Banu Nadir, the Banu Qaynuka, and the Banu Quraiza are not in that list. So they never signed this treaty. So they cannot be held responsible for reneging on a treaty they didn't sign. And I can see why they didn't sign it, because when you read this treaty, first of all, stipulates in the very first article that God, Allah, would be their God, and that they will all come under that God, and that Muhammad would be their arbiter between man and God. No Jew would sign it. I wouldn't sign it. I'm sure many of you, most of you who are watching me, would not have signed a treaty like that. So it stands to reason they would sign it. Now, these are the 3 major tribes. These are the ones that they had the most wealth. So I can understand why Muhammad would have for financial reason, economic reason, he would want to confront them. And it could be that because they didn't sign the treaty, that's why he confronted them. But to suggest, therefore, that they are guilty, and I hear Muslims saying this all the time, they had it coming to them. They are guilty because they didn't sign the Constitution of Medina. whether or not the Constitution of Medina even existed, or whether or not it's even historical, we saw in the last episode it's not historical. It's nothing more than the late 9th century. But see, we have to kind of talk within the 9th century, because all these stories, including the names of these Jews, are all from the 9th century. And we already saw that archaeologically speaking and historically speaking, there were no Jews in yet. Can you see? We're going in a circle here. And that's why Muslims have it coming and going. They've got a difficulty coming and going. It's for them, they've got to prove, first of all, that there were even Jews in Medina, and then they've got to prove that this constitution is correct. But then they've also got to show, if they're going to go with that at the constitution, then you're going to have to ask, then why did Muhammad throw them all out? Why did he then slit the throats of 800 of their men? Why did he take the women as concubines and the children as slaves? Why did all this happen if there was a constitution of Medina which supported it? And their answer is, you can't say that because they reneged on it, because they never signed it. You can't have it both ways. Let's take that and bring that into the 21st century. If this constitution is what Muslims want to hold on to, if this is the constitution that they want to say as their document for all people in all places and all times, because it's the one that Muhammad did, and Muhammad is their model, he is their paradigm. If this is what they want to impose on us today, let's just ask that. Would any of us agree to this kind of constitution? Remember, let me just put it in context. I did this when I was back in London. I remember at Speaker's Corner a number of years ago, a Muslim was trying to defend it, and he was trying to say, yes, it's perfectly legitimate. That document is something that Muhammad signed. He created it. Therefore, it is a document for us today as well. And I said, well, that's fascinating. Let's just put this into the context of London. Let's just say that Muhammad came to London, and let's just say he moved to London. He had only been there for 2 years. He was not from London. He was from elsewhere, but he came and moved to London. And the majority of people in London are not Muslims. There's about 1 million out of the 10 million that are there, that I understand, that are Muslim. So 1/10 of the population would be Muslim. Nonetheless, he then decides that he's going to become the leader of London immediately, and puts together this treaty, though he's not from London. So he becomes the mayor of London. Let's just say a Muslim becomes the mayor of London. Oh, wait a minute. There is a Muslim who is a mayor of London right now as we speak. Ooh, this is kind of scary, because it actually could happen. If that mayor, Sadiq Khan, if he wanted to go back to this constitution, he would have to hold to this constitution, because that comes from his prophet, that comes from his paradigm, that is his narrative. Let's just say Sadiq Khan were to take this constitution and start and demand that everybody sign it. Let's say all of us had to sign it, all of us, the other 9 million of us who had to sign it, because he is now the mayor of London. He is now the authority between man and God. He now wants us to stipulate that we believe in that God, Allah, and in the last times, and he becomes the arbiter for anything that God said. So we have to sign that. And if we don't sign it, then we can be held accountable, and we will have the same result as what Muhammad did to the Banu Qaynuka, the Banu Nadir, and the Banu Quraiza family. Therefore, if we refuse to follow Sadiq Khan, the current mayor of London, if we refuse to follow him in battle, if we refuse to support him, if we refuse to actually come alongside him, then we could be seen as traitors, and because we have reneged on a document that we haven't even signed, because I wouldn't sign it, and I know the majority of you living in London, those of you who are from London, you wouldn't sign it. So, nonetheless, because we didn't sign the document, we could therefore be thrown out of our houses, thrown out of London. We could, if those of us who do not support him as he goes and battles against other people, then we could have our throats slit, and we can have our women taken from us, given to other Muslims, and our children taken as slaves. If that is what Muslims want to claim, if you want to claim this document, and then you're claiming that at the same time those who reneged on this document then deserve what they got, then put it into the 21st century and see if this document is relevant for today. Can you then understand why we're standing against Islam? Because it's this kind of material, it's these kind of documents, it's these kind of constitutions that I know you Muslims have to go back to. And when you do get political power, when you do get control, you're going to demand that of all of us. Why? Because you only have one paradigm, and his name is Muhammad. You only have one model, Muhammad. And what he did, you're going to do. Because eventually, once you get that political power, you have to fall back on what he did, because he is the arbiter between man and God. He is the model of how we're to live today, how you're to live today. So even if you want to say the Constitution of Medina is authoritative, I don't want it to be authoritative. I don't want anything to do with the Constitution of Medina, because I can see how it can be used so easily, since it was used so easily against the Banu Qaynuka, the Banu Nadir, and the Banu Quraiza family. They're between 624, 625, and 627. Please, in the heaven's sakes, people wake up. It can also be used against us in the 21st century. Didn't mean to get excited about it, but it's something that we need to hold on to. We need to be careful. Muslims, be careful what you foist as authoritative. Be careful. It's not authoritative. Thank God it's not authoritative for us today, and thank God it's not even historically accurate. So you either coming or going, you've got to be careful what you're going to do with this Constitution. Do not accept it unless you're going to see how it can be used against you, like Muhammad did, if that is true. Thank goodness I believe none of it is true. I can throw it all away. I don't even know if this man did anything with any Jews in Medina, and that's where I would rather go. I would rather throw his history right out the window, because he is the man I don't want for today. He is the paradigm I don't want to follow, and I don't want it also to come against me as a Christian or a Jew or anybody else who's a non-Muslim. Can you then see why we're doing what we're doing and why we're saying what we're saying? The empirical evidence shows me there was no Constitution. But if Muslims who believe there was a constitution, if this is their constitution, if this is what they're going to follow, then I can see what they're going to do with it. And that's why I don't want it coming or going. I want to throw it all out. I want to throw him all out as well. Okay, this is Jay. A lot more to ponder on here in my office. Over and out.